Good morning. Thank you all for joining us today and welcome to our latest pop-up PD from the CSDE. Today we'll be covering formative assessment practices from the classroom to remote learning. My name is Greg Dresko. I'm a consultant in the Turnaround Department, and today I'm joined by my colleague Carol Dibble, also from the Turnaround Department. As you know, pop-up PDs are designed to be quick, timely, and responsive to your needs. So it's important to share with our office what topics you'd like to see in the future to continue for our supporting you. Our hope is that this is another opportunity to join together as a community of learners in facing new challenges, leaning on one another, and ultimately working towards achieving equity and excellence for all students. This structure of pop-up PD may also be something that you turnkey and implement with your staff. We all know there's a wealth of knowledge and within your own schools and districts. Having these short bite-sized PDs lead a variety of staff and maybe something that you adopt and adapt within your own schools. In our live professional learning, participants use these QR codes to interact with us. The links are still active and you can still participate if you want to in this asynchronous learning. We would appreciate the feedback. We won't, however, give the time in this recording as we would normally in the live presentation. We just simply ask that you pause the recording for as long as you need to. These QR codes don't require a special app or scanner for you to participate. All you need is your phone and your camera. Point the camera at the code and it will open up your default browser on your phone to menti.com to take you to the various interactive questions that we're going to be using for today's session. As you can see, we're going to start right here with our first quick formative assessment. Please take a minute, point your cameras at the code, and tell us what word comes to mind when I say formative assessment. Pause the video now if you would like to take part in this reflection opportunity.
Our learning targets for today's PD are: we will consider the value of formative assessments in a remote learning setting. We will become familiar with resources that are available to you and other districts. And finally, please be willing and open to learn from one another.
As with all of our pop-up PDs, we start with the why. Formative assessments have played an integral part of the educational process, and the more that we know and research, the better we become at driving our instruction to close the achievement gap. John Hattie tells us in his Visible Learning Research that, and I quote, "Combative formative assessments are designed to give students specific feedback on the clear target to be achieved, along with suggestions on how to reach that target on subsequent assessments. Students need to understand that this feedback will be used by their teachers to design specific instruction to help them improve in both the in-person and remote learning setting." The chart above also comes directly from Hattie's research, showing which practices raise student achievement the most using quantitative measures. As you can see, according to the chart and his research, anything greater than 4/10 on his research scale accelerates student learning. Outside of evidentiary student learning, which was the highest scoring, formative teacher evaluation is the second most impactful strategy in raising student success, if it's done effectively. Today's professional learning will focus on how we take formative assessments from the classroom to remote learning.
Please take a moment to anonymously and honestly reflect on your learning community. Here we have another QR code for you to use with 4 questions for you to answer. It's a sliding scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being strongly disagree, 3 being neutral, and 5 being you strongly agree. Use your finger to slide your buttons to where you feel you are as a school. And again, answers will be kept completely anonymous. The questions relate directly to the upcoming slides in our presentation about the formative assessment process.
For some of you, this may look familiar. This comes directly from the Smarter Balanced Resource Center regarding the formative assessment process. This process has 4 attributes, whether you're in person or remote. It doesn't change. They're clarifying, eliciting, interpreting, and finally acting upon that student data. In the remote setting, this also stays true whether you're synchronous or asynchronous with your students. We're going to quickly go over each attribute before diving deeper into the specific formative assessment practices that you can bring back to your community.
The first step of the formative assessment process is to clarify. In the instructional practices pop-up PD that Greg and I did in December, we talked about the importance of learning goals and success criteria. As you can see, it is also the very first step of the formative assessment process. Students need to know what they are learning and how they are going to get there. In a synchronous learning setting, students can restate the learning goal verbally, in comments or during breakout sessions in a think, pair, share. Asynchronously, students can do the same, but in a chat box or in an offline online running journal. The learning target and the success criteria in turn lead to eliciting evidence focused on the learning target.
As Carol said, the second step is eliciting that student evidence of learning, which is an important step of the formative assessment process. We spoke at length about many of the learning platforms in our last Pop-Up PD series, Instructional Practices in the Remote Classroom, on how to elicit student engagement and collect evidence of learning. Whether it's synchronous or asynchronous, the many platforms the school districts are employing effectively, such as Nearpod, Pear Deck, Seesaw, Jamboard, or Google Slides and Padlet, among many others that people are using, allow teachers to gather in-the-moment evidence of learning. Students can respond verbally, use polls, chats, discussion questions, concept maps, virtual manipulatives, quizzes, or other interactive individualized work that meets the needs of each and every student. These same strategies can also be employed asynchronously through the same learning platforms as student assignments and collected as evidence of work completed. All you need is the lesson code to be assigned through your normal asynchronous stream. We will speak in a few moments on how to collect this data on a few of these platforms. The most important piece of this evidence, however, is how you use the evidence and the data you collect, whether you're in person or remote, synchronous or asynchronous.
So now what do we do with this collected data? We interpret it for evidence of learning, trends and progress toward learning goals, and we use it to determine our next instructional steps. In other words, whether we're in person or remote, we act on it and use it to drive our instruction. We can group students based on skills, reteach certain lessons to the whole group, plan RTI, pre-assign breakout groups, or differentiate our instruction and assignments based on the interpretation of this evidence that was collected. Many times, the platforms we use remotely offer us ways to help interpret the data quickly so we can act on it in real time. And acting on the student data and evidence is the final step of the formative assessment process. What we do with the formative assessment data and evidence that's collected is the most important part. How do we adjust our teaching practices to provide the best instruction possible to meet the needs of all of our students? As with in-person learning, we must take time for small skills-based groups, RTI-based groups, reteaching skills based on assessment data, and adapting our teaching practices in the remote setting based on the evidence collected. We use the data collected in formative assessments to give actionable feedback to students in order to move learning forward and in order to differentiate our instruction to meet the needs of all of our students, just like we do for in-person learning.
So now that we've reminded ourselves of the formative process and the similarities to in-person learning, what are some practices that we can use in the remote setting? One strategy is to use entrance and exit tickets. You can use the learning platforms that are already in place in your schools to do quick checks before the lesson to gauge a simple pre-assessment of what the learning target will be. You can review previous information from past lessons, or you can touch on little covered material from the curriculum that you may not get to as a spiral check-in. For example, in math, you may not cover elapsed time in depth in the curriculum, so while the focus may be on fractions, you can do a 5-minute do now on elapsed time so the students are exposed to it over several days, as well as continue to come back to it throughout the year. This process will maximize the instructional time as well as cover more material. Exit tickets can also be a quick assessment of the day's learning targets to see if the success criteria was achieved for valuable data collection to be checked where reteaching might need to occur and also for whom. As you can see on this slide, there are many ways to do either strategy. Another way to formatively assess in the remote classroom is to have a thumbs up, thumbs down system for quick checks. Nearly all of the learning platforms in virtual meets have ways for students to virtually use emojis, either visually or through a chat function. Students can also use their own thumbs up or thumbs down as long as their cameras are on, or if they are creative, they can create stop and go signs or use other visual cues, like we've used for in-person learning to show right there in the virtual meets. Several platforms also have interactive check-ins that teachers can use to check for understanding before moving forward in the lessons. These check-ins can also be kept anonymous in the student view so students can feel secure by letting their teachers know if something isn't quite clear before moving on. This slide shows just a few examples of the practice that we spoke about. The two on the left are screenshots of the Pear Deck learning platform with a thumbs up, thumbs down slide, as well as a student understanding slide. Both are pre-made slides that you can add easily to your lessons. The bottom right is the emoji extension that you can add to your Google Meets for the same check-ins, as well as the hand raise, a clapping emoji, and several others you can use for simple classroom management to keep the students engaged. Finally, the top right is an example of a Jamboard exit ticket for the students to check on the day's learning targets that can also be utilized with many of the platforms, but are quick and easy for apps like the mentioned Jamboard or Padlet, where students can answer or show evidence of learning in different ways. The great thing about an app like Jamboard is that it also saves the work automatically to your Google Drive, so you can access the information later, not only for collected evidence, but also for interpretation and analyzation of that data. Again, these are only just a few examples of this practice.
Throughout the pop-up PDs, we've referenced many learning platforms that your school districts have been using effectively. Aside from interactively engaging students in lessons, they offer pre-made lessons and many other opportunities for collecting differentiated evidence of student work and formative assessments. Additionally, many have easily accessible reports that collect that data for you to analyze instantly once the lessons are complete to drive your future lessons and instruction. Nearpod is one platform we've seen offer these reports.
As Carol mentioned, we've seen a lot of districts using Nearpod effectively in their classrooms. Above, you can see several screenshots from the reports that Nearpod generates for you. On the left is just one type of open-ended question that is offered for data collection. On the right side are the reports that are generated automatically with data showing quiz participation, lesson participation, numbers of students that participated, as well as individual breakdown of each student and their work below it. The other report it can generate are quiz breakdowns by student or by question showing answers that were chosen or which questions were answered incorrectly by the most and by who. This can also all be accessed easily through the formative assessment reports function once lessons and assessments are completed. Nearpod does a nice job of blending together both student work as well as assessment features for teachers to capture accurate data points as well as check for understanding throughout the lesson.
Pear Deck is another platform being used effectively for remote learners that has a teacher dashboard with pop-up prompts, live interactive check-ins for student understanding, and a teacher feedback tool to help educators remotely connect to their students on a day-to-day basis. Like Nearpod, Pear Deck also offers automatic data collection reports connected to the student work that teachers can use to drive their instruction. We highlighted Pear Deck above with the thumbs up and thumbs down check-in tool, but it's also effective for collecting student evidence and using the teacher dashboard that you can see here. On the dashboard, you have control over the entire lesson, including the ability to project student answers to the main screen to generate classroom discussions, hiding the answers to see specific student work, have independent conversations and feedback, check student progress and engagement, and push prompts out to the class. Additionally, like Greg mentioned before with Nearpod, Pear Deck also offers the ability to incorporate opportunities to blend student work with assessment features throughout the lesson so teachers have multiple chances to check in for understanding with evidence of work. Pear Deck allows users to save the work and the lessons and generate reports to collect evidence for interpretation to drive future instruction or even to use in real time.
One final platform that we wanted to highlight is Google, as there are many districts who utilize Google Classroom. It's a multifaceted platform that offers multiple ways to collect evidence of student work for formative assessments. From the aforementioned Google Classroom, Google Drawing, and Google Slides, where you can utilize many of the platforms we've already spoken about, like Nearpod and Pear Deck, as both have add-ons right on the Slides app for seamless transition, to Google Forms, where assessment and data collection is made easy for you. Google has made this transition to remote learning a priority. In addition to making it a priority, they've also done everything they can to make engaging and assessing our remote learners as simple as possible for educators through certification processes and professional developments for teachers. Google Slides are easily manipulated to use text boxes for student work and collection and formative assessments. Google Drawing allows for differentiation of student work. Google Classroom allows for collection of work as well as student discourse and discussion. Google Meets even incorporates Jamboard directly into the video meet and chats now. Finally, Google Forms are the most common and available way to collect data, as well as one of the easiest. The link above has 15 pre-made Google Form formative assessments for you to use, some of which we're going to highlight in just a minute.
These are other sites and platforms we have spoken about and wanted to mention again that offer pre-made formative assessment opportunities that might be right for you and your district. Many already offer pre-made lessons and activities that also have formative assessments tied to the lessons for you. Some sites and apps to check out for student work and data collection are Padlet, Jamboard, BrainPop sites, Khan Academy, and finally Seesaw.
One other thing we wanted to mention are some daily quick formative opportunities that you can build into your daily routines using the platforms we already have spoken about today, as well as the last pop-up PD that Carol and I did about effective student instructional strategies. Dipsticks are short, quick check-ins where students can respond in a variety of ways: the chat, a sticky note to the camera, a poll, or a Google form. This is the quickest and easiest way to get a snapshot of student understanding if they're effectively built into your routine.
Digital journals and some one-pagers are running documents on interactive platforms such as Google Docs or Microsoft Note that allow for history and editing checks, as well as real-time feedback and a quick check-in or even summarization.
Elevator pitches and virtual tweets can be done orally or through platforms such as Jamboard or Padlet that allows students to place sticky notes with limited characters on the screen and other students to like them. The key to both of these are that they're quick 60-second check-ins for data collection and student understanding.
Peer-to-peer evaluation with virtual rubrics allows students to build relationships and receive feedback. Breakout rooms allow teachers to pop in and offer additional feedback to students or to monitor student discourse.
Finally, 3-2-1 can also be manipulated into most virtual platforms where students give you 3 things that they've learned, 2 things that they would like to know more about, and 1 question that they have about the lesson that you just presented. Google Forms is a very useful tool for this activity as it collects this data and it organizes it immediately for you. Our last QR code that we presented in the live session is also one more quick check-in that you can have for your students. This is also how we're going to reflect on today's professional learning. Square, circle, triangle can be done on any platform where the students pick a shape to recall learning for the lesson. A square is what the students squared away. A triangle asks students to recall 3 important learning points that they took away. And the circle asks students to identify something that is circulating or something that isn't quite clear yet. This can easily be manipulated into a virtual learning tool that is interactive on the student side of the remote platform.
Today, we're going to ask you to reflect on this professional learning by choosing a square, circle, or triangle based on how Greg described each shape just now. If you squared something away, please point your camera at the QR code labeled with the square and tell us what you squared away to take back to your school and community. If you gained a lot from the professional learning, point your camera at the triangle and tell us 3 things that you're taking away from this learning. And if something is circulating, resonating, or maybe even not quite clear, choose the QR code for the circle so that we can either help clear up a misconception or hear from you in the future regarding what is resonating. Again, since this is an asynchronous training, pause the video if you'd like to share some feedback with us.
So welcome back again, and if you left us some feedback, we'd like to thank you for reflecting on our today's professional learning. As with all of our pop-up PDs, our resources are in a convenient place for you to check out. We want to encourage you to go to the CT Learning Hub and check out the PD playlist where you'll find additional articles, videos, and podcasts to view or read on your own time. Teachers can use this tool to guide additional learning on formative assessment practices for the remote learner. You can support them through staff discussions after teachers engage in the learning. Additionally, on the CT Learning Hub, you can find all of our other resources, including previous pop-up PDs, our virtual look-for tools with guiding questions, and other webinars that our amazing staff has been working extremely hard to put together for you. As we said at the very beginning, if there's something that you'd like to see there that isn't already there, please reach out to us so that we can get to work right there for you.
Thank you so much for joining us today to learn more about taking formative assessments from in-person learning to the remote classroom. We hope you enjoyed today's session and are able to bring back some valuable tools to your community to share with your staff and teachers.
As you can see, Carol's and mine emails are at the top of the page, so if you ever want to reach out to us for ideas or resources for additional support, feel free to do so. We're always here to support you in any way that, possible that we can. Please be on the lookout for more pop-up PDs coming to you from the CSDE over the next several weeks. As Carol said, thank you so much for joining us today. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Stay tuned for one more slide that will show some of the resources that we used for today's professional learning series.